Before we get started, I want to issue a quick warning that this video is going to be highly opinionated and will include a lot of critique. If you can't really handle people with contradicting opinions to yours, then this video definitely won't be for you. Please don't insist on watching this and then complain about my negativity in the comments. Think it through. Going out of your way to discredit me with non-reasoning won't really paint a good picture of you. This video will include my opinions. If you disagree or wish to add more, then be sure to let me know in the comments. And that will be fair enough. On top of this, I'd like to issue a spoiler warning because I may use spoilers as examples to explain myself and my reasoning. Anyways, let's get cracking. Assassin's Creed Odyssey, The Fate of Atlantis Episode 1, The Fields of Elysium, for one, has a ridiculously long title that I'll avoid saying every 3 sentences, like I usually do with titles because god damn it. But it's also perhaps the most out-of-touch, nonsensical filler content that Assassin's Creed has ever gotten. This first episode in a 3-part DLC didn't see liftoff for me, and hopefully in this video I'll be able to explain why. Overall, the best way to explain it would be to picture this. Has anyone had a dream where you set out to do something or go somewhere, but the dream gets completely derailed and you don't wind up doing that thing or going to that place at all? Well, that's just kinda how I felt about this expansion. What's going on is complete nonsense, just like in Dreams. The DLC is rammed with tedious filler as content, and the ending to the expansion left me completely dissatisfied. That being a cliffhanger, as it's going to be followed up on with part 2. But not a good one, but I'll explain more in a bit. What I'm trying to say is for the 7 hours it took me to get from start to finish, not accounting for the 2 hours it took me to retrace just to fix a glitch that broke the game, I feel like I've achieved absolutely nothing.
Huh?
Okay, I think I need to retrace some words and talk about what this DLC is. The way I understand it, the player enters a simulation by Elysium to help us understand the stuff of Hermes, and through that, Layla does so too. This is the first Assassin's Creed DLC to have modern day. How much modern day, you ask? Give or take a minute or 2 at the start and end. So not really enough, but hopefully the other 2 episodes make up for it with more. Once in the simulation, we find ourselves in the Fields of Elysium. Not even Atlantis, okay then? Where we're thrust into a conflict between Persephone, a control freak ruler essentially, and disenfranchised humans who wish to leave her realm. Already, I literally care not at all because none of it is real within Assassin's Creed lore, it's all just a silly simulation. You enter a new open world and it looks beautiful provided you're looking straight at the floor, otherwise you'll find yourself looking far ahead and seeing the waterfalls in the distance, which don't look great. I've got nothing against the DLC's look for the most part, but if you must insist on having these faraway waterfalls in our faces for the duration of the expansion, then they've got to look at least semi-decent, otherwise they're just going to ruin the overall aesthetic. I know they're all quite far away, but I still noticed it. The DLC casts an illusion that makes you think it's bigger than it actually is, when in reality it's filled with a whole lot of nothing. While exploring this vast open space that you've been given, you'll soon discover that there's only one side quest and it doesn't even pretend to not be filler, essentially telling you to liberate 32 soldiers possessed by Persephone's magic, 8 in each of the 4 districts. With the story, like I said, it's all a simulation, so I really don't give a toss. It's not like Curse of the Pharaohs where only part of the DLC was an illusion. This entire thing is an illusion, which means this DLC in its entirety does not take place anywhere that actually exists, which immediately removes the historical intrigue which made me love Assassin's Creed all those years ago. Assassin's Creed should be an alternative perspective on history in which there's actual historical stuff going on in the background in an actual setting. This DLC throws all of that out the window and goes full on fantasy. Sure, it's a preference-based critique, but let me ask you this. If you played the old games back 10 years ago or however long it was and pondered, I wonder what this would be like in 10 years. I guarantee you scrapping stone wizards in the Fields of Elysium in the Witcher 3 bootleg formula wouldn't have sprung to mind. Sure, the franchise has evolved and fair play, but I don't think this direction is the right one for Assassin's Creed, and I'm quite certain I never will. Thankfully, if Ubisoft is anything, it's indecisive, so we'll find ourselves copying another successful franchise's formula soon enough, and maybe that will yield greater success in captivating me. It's not that the RPG route isn't working, it's that Ubisoft aren't executing it well enough. The story consists of a whole lot of nothing as well, what with filler being everywhere. And when you think a quest isn't filler, it's just an anticlimax. On top of this, when you've done all of the quests before the last one, you have to actually liberate all of the districts before you can access the final quest, which takes an extra couple hours to do. The occasional bit of filler content is fine, but when it's copious amounts, then all it's doing is artificially inflating the DLC to appear longer than it is and bigger than it is. Like I said, the DLC is smaller than it pretends to be. For all of Legacy of the First Blade's flaws, at least it wasn't rammed with filler just to make the expansion seem bigger. Granted, there are some quests that don't appear to be filler, and they are few and far between, as what I define as filler is a quest with absolutely no story in it whatsoever, and is purely just go here, do this, and go here, do that. With maybe a cutscene at the beginning and at the end giving you a bozo badge and a pat on the back. And maybe a cool item, but that doesn't make wasting your time any more worth it than it already wasn't. In the quests that are remotely interesting, however, where you think you're being set up for a payoff, it anticlimaxes. An example of this would be this one. Leonidas is in Elysium. He's been getting about being dead, you know how it goes. Well, Persephone sees him as a threat and sends you to kill him. In return, you get to see either Phoebe or Brasidas again, two characters who died in the main story of the game. When you meet Leonidas, he says if you kill the spy in Persephone's court, she'd be satisfied. If you do this, the deal is off. If you kill Leonidas, she will tell you bringing back a loved one will take time. So in the end, this quest is completely hollow, it gives you a difficult choice, but the outcome is still the same. You don't get to see the loved one you were promised to see. Of the two choices, kill Leonidas, by the way, because it is easier and quicker. And since the quest only serves to waste your time, what's the point? So like I said, there's the illusion of a setup and there's absolutely no payoff whatsoever. Which is why I'm equating this DLC to a dream. The narrative this DLC seems to be suffering from so far is the complete opposite issue to the Legacy expansion. Legacy of the First Blade had payoff without build-up, and as a result it was silly. Part 1 of The Fate of Atlantis has build-up without payoff, which is unsatisfying and frankly plain dull. I know there are 2 parts to come, but they seem to be in different worlds, which means that we won't be revisiting this one, so all the payoffs that should have happened in this world won't happen. Another example of the narrative being a bit unsatisfying would be the ending, in which you've done the conquest battle, you're confronting Persephone, you think you're about to fight her, but no, she sends you down a hole where you find yourself in a cave. Here you hear a creature in turn and you find out it's Cerberus, the 3-headed hound. And you think you're about to fight Cerberus as the DLC's ending, but no, at this point you're torn from the Animus for the modern day segment, and that marks the end of the DLC. On to the modern day segment at the end, Layla and Victoria have been found by Abstergo, who come to deal with the assassins armed with swords for whatever reason. Layla kills 2 of the 3 agents, and as she's about to kill the 3rd one, Victoria stops her. Layla sends the survivor to Warnotsoberg. Is he back with the Templars now? In the comics, I believe he was working with the assassins for a bit. I'm a bit confused. Anyway, she sends the surviving agent to Warnotsoberg to come for her himself, at which point Victoria gives the cliche lecture on Layla's moral character, judging her for killing the Abstergo agents. I mean, A, they were trying to kill you, and B, you're fucking assassins! I can't believe killing people escaped the job description there. God, why is this narrative so ridiculous?
There was no reason to massacre them.
Listen here, you little shit. Barring the fact they were going to do the same thing to us, and they knew too much, I agree. After this, we're thrust back into the Animus, and we're back in Atlantis, which means the DLC is over. The DLC does pull some other ridiculous things. For example, Shadowmere from Skyrim is in there for some reason. And well, you get the picture. Of the 7 hours it took me to finish the DLC, I'd be pushed to say an hour of it was worthwhile content. The artificial inflation of it all to make it seem bigger is ridiculous. Bigger is not better. Better is better. Quality content makes quality content. Not long-winded grinds like liberating all districts just to get the ending. To top it all off, the only reason why you're actually in this artificial environment is to learn more about the Staff of Hermes, which you can do in its own quest separate from all the bullshit going on, which makes me wonder why on earth did they bother doing the rest of that if this isn't even a proper part of the story where we could have learned as we went on, but instead we just do it in our own time. So the only time where the staff is actually properly used in the story is when Layla uses it to massacre 3 Abstergo agents at the end. Also, learning about the Staff of Hermes is just 4 extra abilities on top of pre-existing perks that don't seem to have anything to do with the staff. The staff itself is just a pointless dildo-shaped life support machine with handlebars. So the extra abilities that you learn while doing the staff quest in this game, I'd use none of them. In fact, the only good thing I can think about with the overall story and where it takes you is the fact that you meet Leonidas in it, and you get to fight him, which means you get to Spartan kick the bastard. But even this is just plain random. Hey, the resistance of humans here needs your help in order to become free. Yes, but first you must fight me. Ensue fight.
I could have used you at Thermopylae.
You could have used a lot of people at Thermopylae.
Off of the topic of the story, which I think we can conclude is nonsensical, pointless, overinflated, unsatisfying filler, we have the open world itself to talk about. Before we get into what's filling it, let's talk about the open world design itself. Now, the open world is designed in a way which all the main locations are actually elevated from the ground. The only way up to them is to either climb up the cliff some 100 meters, which takes forever, or find the teleporter which will teleport you up. Now, the concept did mean well, however, when you're coming at a location from an angle away from the teleporter, sometimes it's just quicker to climb all the way up by hand than it is to go to that, and even that is tedious. And usually a few moments later after you're done with the location, you just jump down. And because it's so far down, the jump looks more ridiculous than ever, especially if you're landing on a solid surface and you've got the perk which means you don't take full damage. So I get that the world design was meant to make it feel unique, however it just felt like an inconvenience, which I'd be a lot more lenient to if I knew that where I was going would at least occupy me for a while. But in a game that's literally back and forth, go here, do this, then there, do that, it's kind of irritating. Anyways, the open world is a lot emptier than it looks, so don't be daunted by it if you're just starting and think I can't be arsed. The open world here is empty, it's filled with chests and things to loot for money and all that, but that's all. There are, as I said, literally no side quests except for one, and that one side quest isn't really worth doing since it's just crappy filler that is probably best done during the period where you're liberating all the districts from Persephone's control. But even then, it's asking you to take more time to do it, as killing enemies is way quicker than easier than knocking them out and liberating them with the staff for some odd reason. And thus it proves inconvenient even when it's supposed to be the most convenient. And like I said, this is a side quest, you don't have to do this filler, so don't. You'll see plenty of that as a substitute for good quests in the main story. So there's no real reason to explore, and when you're looking for places to liberate in order to quickly get past that liberate the regions quest, you're just following the question marks and looking for forts. It's not that hard. And then there are the statues you can destroy, like the Ptolemy statues in Assassin's Creed Origins, which at least in that game you didn't have to do. Whereas here, if you want to quickly diminish Persephone's control, destroying the statues is a must. And the funny thing about this is there's no mechanic to do it, you're just aimlessly swinging your sword around a statue and eventually it'll crumble. Kinda beats having to kill all the guards in the area before interacting with the statue to destroy it though, so I can't complain there. And yes, the enemies in this DLC are still damage sponges, but in fact it's worse now, as they have special abilities that can drain your adrenaline. The only thing that can actually give you abilities that you can use that can quickly drain enemies' health. So now the fights are even more tedious than ever. I don't mind the actual challenge of fighting enemies with special abilities, but they're still rammed with ridiculous amounts of health, so the only real challenge here is a mental challenge. I've got nothing against difficult enemies, provided I'm not there for 30 minutes fighting enemies who can teleport and steal my adrenaline, the only thing that I can actually use to do decent, well-placed damage. So the issue here is the same as the main game. The enemies are damage sponges, but that's enough of that. On the glitch front, there's one bug of note that I thought I would mention, and I'm not the only one who seemingly experienced it, as people have told me that they've had the same glitch as well. During the quest The Keeper at Kairos, you are tasked with escorting Persephones to be bodyguard to the rebel so that he can report that he is now in cover, as he is a spy for them. It's completely optional, you can take him back to Persephone immediately. If you do that, it will be fine, but if you do choose to escort him, he will stop moving and he won't move at all. You'll have to load back and do it again. Unfortunately for me, I thought going off and doing all the other quests and letting that quest reset would fix it, so I did 2 extra hours of the story before finding out that I've just wasted that time because I'm going to have to redo it all anyway. which I know to a degree is my own fault, but at the same time, it highlights a massive flaw in the multiple quests added system when you get loads and loads of quests just piled on at once. And since this bug caused me to retrace my steps in a game, I consider it game breaking. But beyond this bug, I didn't really experience very many, to be fair. At least the only one caused by the DLC itself. I did find one where I was stuck between the wall and a chest and I died, but that was more the game itself than the DLC that caused it. In conclusion, I won't give this episode a number rating, as all I'd do is subtract the amount of hours I spent playing the game from 10. If I were to sum up this DLC in one word, it would be awful. It tries to give the illusion of size, quality and the like, and delivers of none of that. Even the game's aesthetic is compromised by the hideous waterfall surrounding the entire map. Hopefully episode 2 and 3 of the DLC fix this, but as its own thing, I'm afraid to say this might just be the worst individual expansion to come out of Assassin's Creed. I mean, I didn't have expectations, I didn't expect it to be good, but even then I thought it would be at least better than this. Like I said, provided the other two parts do well, the fate of Atlantis arc could still be salvaged. But I honestly feel as if this is not a good start and Assassin's Creed fans deserve better. And you could be wondering, why do you still play these games if you know you're not going to like them? Well, two things: review codes, and if I didn't make content on these games for people to consume so readily, I probably wouldn't. So at this point I feel as if I've committed to Odyssey and reviewing everything about it, including the DLCs. Once all that's out of the way, I can decide whether or not I want to continue with Assassin's Creed, but knowing the franchise, it'll rebound as it always does. But when you look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey and Syndicate, you really do realise that Ubisoft Quebec like to derail this franchise big time. But there we go, I do apologise for this overly critical video. I never go into a game wanting to review it like this. I never go into a DLC wanting to review it like this. I want to be nice to games, but if that game doesn't achieve a quality that is acceptable, then I'm going to be honest with you. And while this DLC may pretend to deliver a high quality content, what with its illusions and things, it's actually just a lot of filler and no substance, so don't be fooled. Unless you don't mind wasting your time running around like a headless chicken, then yeah, this is your DLC. Hopefully the other 2 episodes in the arc that are yet to release make it all worth it. But there we go, there's my review for The Fate of Atlantis Episode 1, The Fields of Elysium. Thank you all for watching this video, I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to go ahead, leave a like, subscribe, share the channel with your friends and all that wonderful stuff, and I will see you all very soon with another video at some point.